What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. There are some things in this war that even Russian propaganda struggles to clean up with their usual mop of lies, medals, and patriotic slogans. One of those things is the grotesque, gut-wrenching reality of what happens to the men Russia sends to Ukraine. Those who do not come back, either physically or mentally. Those who come back in pieces. And those who never come back at all, not even as a name on a gravestone. Sure, the state will throw medals around like cheap plastic beads at Mardi Gras parade, throw together a little photo shoot or maybe stick a man with no limbs into bionic cosplay video. And honestly, that's not a normal thing to do, that's more of an exception, because single-digit warriors are honored enough to be shown on state media. But what about million others who fought or are fighting in Ukraine? Statistically, it is easier to win a lottery in Russia rather than come back as a hero with all the praise and respect that they promise you on TV. So, but once again, but what about the others? The ones who did not get medals, who did not get prosthetics, and who did not even get remembered? What about the rest 99.99%? So today, let's talk about the dark underbelly of this quote-unquote glorious war, the amputees that do not make into photo shoots, the families of missing soldiers who cling to delusion because the truth is too brutal to swallow, the staggering silence that surrounds tens of thousands of unaccounted lives lost to Putin's meat grinder. Forget what you know about casualties. This is not about numbers anymore. It's more about people who have been erased. By bombs, by bureaucracy, by a regime that is running out of bodies but still insists on acting like it is winning. And speaking about the numbers, most recently revealed statistics show that losses are enormously staggering, way more than people anticipated. Way more than Russian propaganda obviously claims. And now, the people of Russia see it for themselves. Let's get into all of these topics in today's video. So, let's start with the star of the show, the golden boy of Russian military PR, Maxim Baharov. Awarded the Order of Dmitry Donskoy, Hero of Russia, shook hands with generals, kinda, or tried to. Posed for pictures, learned to use bionic arms. They plastered his face literally everywhere, made sure everyone saw this proof that even the most mangled soldier can be turned into a symbol of valor and resilience. What they did not want you to see was the rest of it. The tucked-in sleeves, the photos edited with surgical precision, and the cold truth. Maxim is only one of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. He's just the one they chose to parade around, because unfortunately for him, he has suffered maximum level of injuries, and the more damaged is the person, the more emotional viewers become. It's basically like saying, look what those filthy Ukrainians do to our men, is the main message here. But no matter what, true Russian men never give up. Defense Minister Belousov even visited him in the hospital, threw out that awkward line, we will do whatever we can with prosthetics and all. As if you can replace a man's arms and legs with a few bolts and plastic limbs and pretend like nothing happened. That visit obviously was not for Maxim or his well-being, it was for the cameras. Because, God forbid, the Russian people start realizing that this war does not make heroes. It makes corpses, amputees, and forgotten names in dusty folders. And what makes Maxim's story so tragically unique is that it is not unique at all. He's the anomaly that got attention. What about the rest? Once again, they don't even get a name. They disappear into wounded in action columns, or simply quote-unquote missing, so the relatives cannot even claim the benefits. And if you think that's the end of it, well, buckle up because we are only getting started. In our next chapter, we'll talk about freshly released list of casualties, which proves staggering losses that the Russian army goes through. This, by the way, is not much of a list to show to the rest of the world. No, I mean, we already know that it is in 6-7 digits. What makes it effective is that it is intended for the eyes of the Russian people, and that is different. Let's talk about the numbers. Mediazona has tracked 111,000 confirmed killed Russian soldiers as of June 2025. That's already a huge bump from the previous number, which was under 100,000. But here's the catch. That number barely scratches the surface. Once again, it is only including confirmed eliminations, the ones who are proven to be gone. What it does not include is the mountains of men from occupied Donetsk and Luhansk. It does not include the faceless injured, and it sure as hell does not tell you what happens when someone just vanishes. There are men, tens and hundreds of thousands of them who simply disappeared. No body, no DNA, no explanation. Just a void, and a family left playing to whatever left to their hope. Over 26,000 court applications have been filed this year alone in Russia. Petitions to declare people missing or legally dead. 26,000 families who gave up on searching for their loved ones. How soon does one realize that it's enough? My father, son, or husband is gone, and he's not returning. Months, years. That's not wartime news coverage, that's cold bureaucratic death certificates for people who never come home. These are soldiers whose units lied about their fate, soldiers whose commanders decided not to report them to keep numbers up, or soldiers whose families are still clinging to the tiniest dreams that their loved ones are in some kind of Ukrainian POW camp, when in reality they're already fertilizer on some nameless battlefield in Zaporozhye region. These families are now facing a system designed to forget. They do not get updates, they do not get answers. They get silence, or worse, even false hope. And you know what? False hope is a special kind of cruelty. It chains you to the idea that your son, brother, or husband might still be alive, even as every passing day says otherwise. But that's part of the plan, because if you keep people dreaming, well, they do not rise up. They don't ask questions, they wait, they hope, and they do so very quietly. 111,000 is a humongous number, but it truly speaks volumes when you compare it to other conflicts in the past, post-Second World War, when in fact, by the way, there shouldn't be a comparison. Let's talk about it in our next chapter. The comparison to Afghanistan is not just fair, it is essential. In 10 years of war in Afghanistan, the USSR lost about 15,000 soldiers. The USSR, exactly, meaning it was not only Russians. There were Ukrainians as well, in addition to other post-Soviet countries. But in this current war, there are individual brigades that have already buried that many. Let that sink in. For example, the 15th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, according to one report, has lost nearly 13,000 men. That's just one unit. Obviously, there are dozens more. And guess what? They are being digested over and over again. New records get plugged in, chewed up, and spat out. Sometimes entire brigades go over 2-3 sets of new records. If you are the unlucky one to join one of them, you might not even meet a person who was fighting there since war started. All these people would have joined somewhere halfway through, and the crooked AK they are going to give you will have its fourth owner. The army does not even pretend to care anymore. Replacing soldiers is not a logistical challenge, it is an assembly line of cannon fodder. They come in for a paycheck or under pressure. They get trained just enough to die, and if they survive long enough, longer than expected, they will be sent back, rest assured. The regime does not care how many arms or legs get left behind in the mud. They do not care if your son never comes back or if he comes back in pieces. What's their solution? Crank up the recruitment machine, keep the propaganda flowing, and if the truth leaks through, just show it under a pile of medals and patriotic songs. Each of these brigades has a social media trail of obituaries and desperate posts by families looking for answers. You will find these cries for help on VK, Vkontakte, Russian Facebook, buried under layers of censorship and state apathy. These people are not just fighting the enemy, they are fighting to be remembered, just this one single thing. And the regime of Putin wages another war, the one that's raging inside Russia as well, the war against the truth and inconvenient people. Every time you hear someone being prosecuted for being either a foreign agent or for discrediting the Russian army, the most ridiculous of the crimes of them all, that is precisely that inconvenient quote-unquote person we're talking about. Now let's finally talk about denial. The war is brutal. That's obvious to literally everyone not living under a rock or drowning in Channel 1 propaganda. But what is even more brutal is the psychological grip it has on people. Families refuse to believe their loved ones are dead. They will not take DNA tests. They cling to conspiracy theories that their sons are being held in secret Polish prisons or hidden in NATO labs. Anything but the truth, that they're dead and that bodies might never be found. Even state media puppets like Anastasia Kshvarova are starting to crack under the weight of reality. She recently admitted that the vast majority of missing are just that, dead. Not captured, not brainwashed, not building bunkers in enemy territory, nothing, no, just that. And some of them are so thoroughly obliterated that what is left, and that is a literal quote, is a 100-gram fragment that will never be found. Let that image haunt you for a second, for a while. A whole man, a whole life, reduced to something smaller than a smartphone. A baby once. Raised and loved by his parents, graduated from school, bringing flowers to his first love, holding mother's hand when crossing a road, and now just 100 grams chunk of meat and bones. Kshevarova never gave full credit to these people. After all, for her, they are just pieces of meat. But in reality, this used to be a loved human being. And guess what? Admitting this truth publicly is a crime in Russia, because telling the truth undermines the state. Telling the truth is extremism. Telling the truth is what gets journalists locked up, channels shut down, and families harassed by the police. There are no pieces of meat, there are only heroes of the motherland. But we will not show them to you, of course, but all of them are. And it's the Ukrainians who reduce them to nothingness, not the regime of Putin. Being told such things is how you know you're living under dictatorship, not when lies are told, but when truth is punishable. And meanwhile, the myth machine rolls on. We're winning, they say. We have liberated more land, they say. But what they do not say is that these victories, quote-unquote, come at the cost of the entire next generation. Young adults are eliminated, and future kids lose their fathers. Each new fake referendum is bought with another limb, another life, another mother screaming into the void. They do not mention that even if Russia were to take every inch of Ukrainian soil, it would still lose, because it is bleeding itself dry from the inside. The only one single person winning from all this is obviously Putin. War keeps his regime safe, and what happens after he is long gone, well, that's obviously not for his concern. Well, there you have it, guys. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support our work, there are links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.